This is me. You probably know me as Aya Al Khatib. You're an incredibly good looking, funny, and hard working student. This is my house. I live here, in Canada. But I haven't always lived here. In fact, in order for me to live here, my family has made lots of sacrifices and went through many hardships. This is the story of how my family got to Canada. This is my place in Canadian history. My family's journey starts out in 1965, where both my mother's side of the family and my father's side moved out of Palestine due to job opportunities. My father was born in Saudi Arabia in 1971 and moved to Kuwait 2 years later, the same year my mother was born. They both lived in Kuwait for 18 years. My father then moved to Yemen to study in university in 1990, the same year the Gulf War had started. On August 2nd, 1990, Iraq's invasion of Kuwait started at the order of Saddam Hussein. This was in order to cancel a large debt that Iraq owed Kuwait, acquire Kuwait's large oil reserves, and increase Iraq's power in the region. On August 3rd, the UN ordered Iraq to withdraw from Kuwait, and on August 6th imposed a worldwide ban on trade with Iraq. Finally, on November 29th, the UN authorized use of force if Iraq did not withdraw by January 15th. On January 16th and 17th, Operation Desert Storm began, a massive US-led air campaign that continued throughout the war. At the same time, Canadian CF-18 jet fighters flew on offensive missions in the war, marking the first time Canadian forces had engaged in battle since the Korean War. On February 12th, Operation Desert Sabre began, an Allied ground offensive that launched against Iraq. On February 28th, Iraq was officially defeated. After the Kuwait government returned to power, they expelled most of the Palestinian residents living there. This was in retaliation for the Palestine Liberation Organization's support of Iraq's occupation of Kuwait, which Palestinians had not supported. The government gave them 1 month to leave, otherwise they would be thrown into the Arabian desert. March through September, about 200,000 Palestinians were expelled, and another 200,000 who fled during the war were denied return. Although there were nearly 400,000 displaced Palestinians, neither the UN Security Council nor the General Assembly helped these refugees out. Luckily, my father was in Yemen at the time and quickly applied for a visit visa for his family. They got accepted and moved to Yemen, where they stayed. As for my mother's side, they were also accepted into Yemen, but only because my grandfather was a teacher. My parents met in university through a mutual friend and got married. This was when they started thinking of moving. My father had graduated and could not find a good job, and both my parents did not want their children to experience the hardships they had due to our Palestinian citizenship. Alongside Canada, my parents considered the US and Australia as immigration possibilities, but after looking at the country's systems and their way of life, my parents decided Canada was the best choice. They applied in 1999 through the Skilled Workers Visa. A year later, my parents received something that would change their lives for the better and forever give them joy. Me. 4 years later, my younger sister Besma came along. Finally, in 2006, my parents received the visa, and on August 1st, we made a landing in Mississauga and stayed for the summer. We came back in 2009 for about 6 months to see Montreal, where my younger brother, Yasser, was born. We landed in Canada a year later on July 29th, and 6 months later, my sister Lena was born. And we have lived here ever since. Although it took a lot of time and a lot of work to get here, we live in a country whose citizenship is recognized, where we live safely and happily and can secure our futures. And although my parents had to go through a lot to get here, I'm glad we got here in the end.